17, you had to put in the signs. The first one was greater than or equal to, 24, right? The second one was just greater than. 16, if you were doing this in the computer or on the app, it would be a drop-down menu, but because it's on paper, you can't really do that. So the first one was down, and the second one was steeper. And go on to the next page. 17, similar. The first one was 1/2. The second one was 2 more than. For 18, you should have had any of these 2 points. You should not have drawn a line through it. You just had to plot 2 points. So there will be some questions that will say, like a line will form, but this one, make sure you're reading the directions, because this one just asks for 2 points. Did I type this? Did I type this?
I don't know. What the flip?
Whoa!
What's that?
Hey, I'll try it. I mean, I think it's right. What's going on there? Oh.
Right. 19. This is like what we were just doing with function notation. You're putting in some, this was domain and range. So you could have used Desmos to find the range here, but it was everything greater than or equal to 3. And then for 20, which one has exactly 1 0? So it's looking for which of these only crosses the x-axis once. So you could have used Desmos for that, and it was the g of x and the j of x equations or functions. And then 21 was similar, but which one had an x-intercept of 3? And it was the h of x and the k of x functions. Next week's on Monday, 22 through 28 is due. 22 up here, but were there any we wanted to see by hand or in Desmos? Make sure you're working on those. Go into your function notation. We were on the second page that looks like this. So I think we did number 1 on Friday. And then look at numbers 2 through 6. Are there any of those we want to see you go over? Yeah.
How did you solve it then? Ask for help since December.
Are there any of these we want to see, do, go over, have questions about? Ray, do you have any questions on this? Keep in mind that you're going to be solving these or putting them in a calculator. Go on to the next page. Questions on 7 through 10 that we want to see you go over. would start with one of them algebraically in the calculator. You can just use the calculator. Make sure you ask, use the time to ask. Alright, so just 7. Do we have questions on 7? Which one? So this is just like the opposite of what we did before. Now we have f of x equals 0, so that's your y equals 0, and you're trying to find what is your x. So when y is 0, what is x?
0.
But x equals 0. You could also write it like this. Because it's saying when x is 0, y is 0. So either or. Any others in number 7 you want to see do go over and I will say in some of these there are 2 x values. You would just list them both. If they're not on a whole number, you would just make up a decimal closest to it. Any others from 7? D. So when y is 4, what is your x value? So you could put it like this, or f of negative 2 equals. Other questions there? When y is negative 2, what's your x value? And then C would have 2 answers. 8 through 13 is similar to what we started doing with the x, but also what we were just doing with the y on Friday. You just have to find more of them. So you could solve this 3 times, or you could use the calculator. We'll do both, and then if there are any others we want to see you go over, we'll do that. So for each of these, I'm going to make this y equals, because that's similar. And I'm going to replace each of our range values with y, and solve each one. In each of the problems, we're doing the same thing, adding 5 to whatever the range value is. But then you would list those in the same way that we wrote the range. So the domain is least to greatest 2, 5, 10. So by hand you would solve it. In the calculator you would look for those y values. You would do the same thing in Desmos, but remember in Desmos is more of a guessing game.
I brought this up, but I didn't.
So in y equals, if I change that to x minus 5, go into my table, and look for when x is negative 3. I put something wrong. Oh, not when y is okay. When y is negative 3, when y is 0, and when y is 5. So 2, 5. Questions on that? Any other questions, 9 through 13, we want to see, do go over, have questions about? By hand in the calculator in Desmos. Okay. So in the calculator, I'm going to put 13 in. You'll have Desmos. But the same function, you do the same thing in Desmos. So if I go ahead and do this, look at my table, and then I'm looking for when y is negative 3, 9, and 15. So I have 9, that's 0. I'm just going to write that down so I don't forget. And then I see these numbers are going down, so if I want to find negative 3, I have to keep going. So when x is 18, y is negative 3. And then I have to go back and find 15. So when x is negative 9. And then I would just write that in order. Negative 9, 0, 8. Questions there? Other questions on this page? Well, I know the iPads aren't out. Keep this in mind for when I go up off them. So put in your function, change it to a table, and you're looking for when y is negative 3, 0, and 8. So I have 8, it would be negative 2. But now I need to find the others. So when y is 0, I'm going to have to go down so I can start guessing numbers. Someone guess a x value. Okay. So if I put in 5, let's see what happens. Not low enough. Someone guess something higher.
1,000.
Okay, not 1,000. That's too high. 10 is closer. 1,000, just so you see what happens. Way too high. It was 14 for 0. And then we still need negative 3. Keep going. And even if it is, that's okay.
Oh, but the x value is
So you just write that. 17. Okay, not quite.
1.
In order, that would be -2, 14. Other questions there? Okay. So then you have the rest of the class, like the next 15 or so minutes to work on last week's Delta Math, previous Delta Math. The last 2 Delta Maths of the year are due this Friday, the domain and range and the function notation. Practice from your notes. I still have the practice quizzes. I'll unlock the iPads. TestNav, your 8-ball packet, any SEL